How's everybody doing? We're coming in after the Guardians unfortunately lose to the Detroit Tigers, but we're here for better or worse to talk football. Um, and the football that we have to talk about is not at a great place with the Cleveland Browns. What we kind of understand as a fan base, or at least most of us, right? There's always going to be an outlier. Is this current experiment at quarterback is a unmitigated failure. It just is what it is. A lot of us in this chat, I think most of us in this chat, wanted this to work on some level because we're Browns fans and we wanted the Browns to have the best team possible. And once the Browns made the decision to go all in on Deshaun Watson, well, you wanted that to work out because if that works out, that will work out for the Browns. And I think for the last 2.25 years, people have been willing to reasonably give this thing a try. And I think what we saw on Sunday was, at least for the fan base, the straw that broke the camel's back. That was a bridge too far. The level of performance that he had, the frequency of that level of performance from Deshaun Watson is also another big part of the issue. I know that there are some Watson fans that after that first game was like, hey, it was just a bad game. It's just a bad game. Well, now we're 5 weeks into the season and Deshaun Watson has put up 2 performances worse than what he did in week 1. He dropped another single-digit QBR game this week. He had a 40 Pro Football Focus grade, which was, I don't even got to tell you, it's the worst amongst all quarterbacks. He was bad, capital B, bad. And I don't care if you think it's the offensive line that's making him play this bad. The issue isn't that he's bad. The issue is that he's even capable of being this bad. The Browns did not trade 3 first-round picks. The Browns are not signed to a $230 million contract, a quarterback who is even remotely capable of playing this bad, even if the circumstances aren't perfect for him. Nobody reasonable is thinking that Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback right now. I don't even think it's a reasonable thought to think that he's capable of greatness at this point. It was one thing to drop a game like you did against the Cowboys, right? I think we all were willing to forgive that. It was one thing to drop that game that you dropped against the New York Giants. I think less of us were willing to forgive that. It was another thing to drop that game against the Commanders. But to do it in this short of time, all together, when you're healthy, you got an offense built around you, it really makes me wonder, how bad are you really? Because last year when Watson wasn't in an offense that was catered around his strengths, quote unquote, he looked better than this. So we give Watson more control. We give him more power. We let him have an imprint on the offense, and this is the result. Maybe he was better last year because we were better at hiding how bad he was last year. It's got me rethinking a lot. I watched the Commanders with Jaden Daniels and think, wow, they got a good quarterback. They got some other problems on their team. Their offensive line isn't that great, right? I don't think their offensive coordinator is amazing. Cliff Kingsbury has been known for not being amazing. But I watch them and I go, damn, that's a good quarterback. For anybody who is willing to defend Watson, when have you watched him this year and thought, damn, that's a good quarterback? A lot of people want to point and say it's not one person to blame. The Browns are currently trotting out that pathetic line. And I'm just going to call BS on it immediately. Yeah, it's not one person messing up, but the one person who is messing up the most is also the one person who makes the highest percentage of the salary cap. right? Follow the money. That tells you where a team values certain positions and how much blame you should put on certain positions. Is follow the money, right? When the defense doesn't play good, people look at Miles funny. Why is that? Because Miles is the highest paid player on the defense. He's the face of the defense. Well, when the offense looks like this, I mean, how do you not look at Deshaun Watson funny? And then you look at the tape, and if we have enough time today, I might just go through the tape just to show y'all what we're dealing with right now at the quarterback position. It's easy to blame the offensive coordinator. It's easy to blame the offensive line. It's easy to blame the head coach or whoever it is that you've been waiting years to blame. But we got to be real about this. The quarterback stinks. We've given this a chance. We've given him opportunities. We put him in a system that reminds him of what he was doing in Houston. He got worse. The Browns have done everything they could to make this thing work with Watson. They've done everything they could to make this work with Watson. I'm tired of the excuses about why it's not working. If he was a franchise quarterback, you wouldn't have to be perfect to make it work. We made the same argument for Baker Mayfield. We got sick of Baker Mayfield for the same exact reasons. And he should probably have the same fate as Baker Mayfield, which is no longer being the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know some people are going to make the argument, oh, well, we don't want to make the same mistake because what if Watson goes somewhere else and he plays good? Who cares? I could care less. And I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. I don't want to deal with Watson being on this team anymore. I'm tired of the drag that it is having him on this roster. And he's not even good. And on top of not being good, arguably you can say he's making the team worse. He's certainly making the environment around the team worse. That's undeniable. So if somebody else wants to pick that up, good on them. Do it. I could care less. I'm not sitting here living in my fears worried that, oh, what if he goes to Carolina and plays good? Who cares? Do you want to sit through 3 more years of this? What are you worried about that for? And let's be honest about what the reality is with Watson. The day he's benched as Cleveland Browns starting quarterback, which I think will happen some point this year, that's it. His career's over. He's not recovering from this. He's 30. He's not good anymore. And he has more baggage than a mail department. Who wants that? Who's licking their chops to bring in Deshaun Watson, even if it's for free? Even if it's a Russell Wilson type thing. Who wants that? What team do you think is going to pick up Deshaun Watson? Wait, what league do you think is going to pick up Deshaun Watson? I think the UFL would have to have a conversation about if it'd be worth it for them. Not because Watson couldn't play in the UFL. I'm sure he could. But, like, would it be worth it? Would anybody want to watch the UFL because Watson's playing there? Wouldn't you be outweighed by more people? Just be disgusted that the UFL made that move? The same thing with Canadian football. Like, where do you think Watson's going to play? If you're so afraid of Watson having a big boom somewhere else, like, where is he going to play? Who's going to play football with him? He going to play like that Arena Football League thing? So that's where I'm at with the whole, oh my God, what if Watson goes somewhere else and plays good? Man, if he goes somewhere else and plays good, I don't care. Good riddance. Good riddance. But Watson's days are numbered in Cleveland, man. The writing is on the wall. It's inevitable at this point. The fan base, who was already turning on him to start the year, completely is rejecting Watson for good reason at this point. The team around him does not look like they are super excited to play football with Deshaun Watson. I saw Deshaun Watson get into a scrape on the sideline during this game. I'm surprised not a lot of people talked about it. But there was a part where Deshaun, he ran onto the sideline. He got in a little pushing match with somebody on the Washington Commanders team. And it wasn't the normal crazy response you would see from a team when that happens on their sideline. Like, some people were ready to defend Deshaun. But it wasn't like, hey, what are you doing? Like, when you watch Joe Burrow, whenever somebody does something extra with Joe Burrow, how the Cincinnati Bengals react with him, or Lamar Jackson. And then watch how they reacted when somebody put hands on Deshaun. I really got to ask the question, who wants this to continue? I'm not asking that question to the fan base, by the way. I'm asking who wants this to continue within that building. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of people who want this to continue. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of people who demand this should continue. The only people I can see being in that position are the people who put a lot into this and might have a hard time admitting that it's a failure. That's Deshaun Watson. That's Kevin Stefanski. That's Andrew Berry, and that's Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam has sunk hundreds of millions of dollars into this big swing at the quarterback position. I'm sure he's not thrilled to be looking at it after 17 games and thinking to himself, he might have to call it a day, which also means leaving about $150 million on the table. I don't think Andrew Berry is thrilled that they missed 3 years of first-round draft picks for what they're getting at the quarterback position. And I don't think Kevin Stefanski is thrilled that 3 years of working on the offense with Deshaun Watson has resulted in an offense that has gotten progressively worse with Deshaun Watson year over year. It's to the point where I'm like, hey, other than sunk costs, who really needs to see this out? What more do we need to see from Deshaun Watson? Here's what's going to happen with Deshaun for the rest of the year if he plays. He's going to have some games like he did against Washington. He'll have a couple more games like he did against Jacksonville. If we're lucky, he'll have another game like he did against the Raiders. But then he's going to drop a lot of stank in between. This is who Deshaun Watson is in 2024. He's gotten worse than he was in 2023. He's gotten worse than he was coming back from 2022 in suspension after a 700-day layoff. It's gotten worse than that. Deshaun Watson is playing the worst football of his life right now. And there's no signs that it's going to get better. Mina Kimes said something interesting when talking about Christian McCaffrey. She said, hey, when a player has an injury you've never heard of, it's usually a red flag that player's cooked. Deshaun had an injury we never heard of. It was pretty weird when it happened, right? Remember the weirdness around it. Maybe that was a much bigger deal than we thought at the time. Maybe that injury really did more. And we're seeing not only Deshaun Watson struggling to come back after 2020 ball, but we're also seeing Deshaun Watson who physically can't perform to the same quality that he once did, even in 2023. Here's another fun question. When I think of everything going on with Watson, and I think of how much we've seen and how much the fans are tired of watching this after just 5 weeks of football, I really have to ask the question, what are they seeing every day at practice? And the reason I ask that question is not to make a judgment on why they're starting him. I know why they're starting him. They're starting him because he's paid $45 million to play quarterback. There's no question of why that happens. The reason I ask that question is, man, it took us 5 times watching Deshaun Watson perform in this 2024 season, what is that locker room going through? Because they have seen Deshaun Watson play football much more than 4 times. They have seen Deshaun Watson practice and look like this, I would assume, since March. And they have seen it. Maybe when they saw it in the spring, they thought it'd get better. And then they came back for OTAs and they thought it'd get better. And then they came back for training camp and they thought it'd get better. And then they come back for the season and they thought it'd get better. And now they're 5 weeks in the season and there's no way they can think it's going to get better. Like, just think about that. If you're sick of this as a Browns fan, if you're sick of watching this as a Browns fan, what in the world are these dudes on this offense thinking about Deshaun Watson when they've had to practice with this? This is not a breaking news story to them 5 weeks into the season that this is what Deshaun Watson looks like. This apparently has been how they've looked since May. It makes a lot of things make sense when you think of it that way. How they came out week 1, how they continue to come out, makes you think, oh, they knew this offense was going to stink because they knew that this dude was going to stink, and they knew that there was no hope that he was going to get benched fast because they've been watching this since May. So if you watch the games and you think, man, Amari Cooper seems really fed up, or if you watch the games and think, man, this offense doesn't seem like they believe, or if you watch the games and think this defense doesn't look like they're believing, it's because they're not on week 5 of this experience. They're on like their 20th week of this experience with Deshaun Watson in 2024, and only 2024. I think Diana Rossini had a clip that was going viral that was a few months old where she was talking about how there doesn't seem like a strong belief in Deshaun Watson. Well, if this is what he's been looking like in behind closed doors, I can imagine that's the case. Because again, what was the excuse for looking like this? He's supposed to be back from that injury. He's supposed to be 100% healthy. That, to me, is a huge part in this. And the reason I think about it that way is the number one thing I'm worried about with this team is what's the fallout going to look like with Deshaun Watson? Like, we know this era is on its way out. People are still fighting it. It's technically still around because he's technically still the starter. But let's be honest. This era is on its way out. It's done. And what's the fallout going to be? And for us, I think there's a lot of us being like, hey, man, Kevin shouldn't go. This isn't on Kevin. This is on other people. Kevin's not really responsible for this. And that might be how we feel about it. But remember, we've only been watching this mess for 5 weeks. I don't know how somebody would feel if they're in that locker room and they've been watching this since March. Every week. I saw Kevin had to print out a new play sheet in the second half of this game. I don't know what the hell's going on. All I know is that this looks like a team with an awful, awful, awful quarterback. Everything else can be sorted out however you want it to. But they look like a team with a bad quarterback. And even worse than this, they don't just look like a team with a bad quarterback. They look like a team that knows they have a bad quarterback. And you just don't recover from that. You know, as much as people talked about the 2023 season, I never watched the Browns play with Deshaun Watson out there and thought to myself, oh, the Browns, the players on this team, don't think Deshaun is a good quarterback. That never crossed my mind in 2023 or 2022. In 2024, It smacks me in the face that that's how these people feel. Amari's body language from this year to last year, world of difference. And I think Amari's body language looks like that is because he knows he's going to be held accountable for Deshaun Watson's mistakes. It's not good. This isn't what the fans deserve. This isn't what the players deserve. And again, the question to the Browns front office, head coach, and ownership is, when are you going to read the room? Because what I've seen this week from Kevin Stefanski from a press conference standpoint, and look, I tend to give a bit of slack when it comes to press conferences because I understand you're not really allowed to say what you actually feel at the press conference. You're kind of hamstrung and hand-tied on what you can say based on what's appropriate to say and what the team needs to hear. And that what a coach says at the press conference isn't and shouldn't be expected to be the 100% truth. There is some decoding that you have to do here. But it doesn't feel like the Browns are reading the room right now. Like, even if you didn't want to throw your 100% support behind Deshaun Watson right now, I don't think how they've handled it does a lot for making people feel like the room's being read. I really think that this front office, this head coach, this staff is naive enough to think, hey, we can roll Watson back out at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's going to end well. I don't think it's an option for me personally. You can put him out there like this against the Cincinnati Bengals, man. At home, like, I don't think that's going to be a scar that you want to create within the fan base to this team. Because that fan base is going to be ruthless to Deshaun Watson at home if he starts. They're tired of him. They're tired of this era. And right now, it's only Deshaun Watson that they're tired of. But if the head coach makes it clear that extending the Kevin Stefanski era also means lengthening the Deshaun Watson era, if the general manager makes it clear that extending the AB era means extending the Deshaun Watson era, and if Jimmy Haslam and D Haslam make it clear that they have no intention on ever changing the quarterback as long as he's on this contract, you're either going to get wrath or rapid apathy. I don't know which one's worse. I really don't want the rapid apathy. The rapid apathy is really, really bad. Where just people just stop caring about the Browns. I hope that doesn't happen. Hope Jimmy Haslam and D Haslam are smart enough to understand the damage hanging on to Deshaun Watson too long can do to the long-term health of this fan base. I mean, bringing in Deshaun Watson has already done its damage to the fan base. It's really put a split in this fan base that is hard to fix or mend. But if you continue this era against the will of almost everybody who has to watch it, I don't know how that can continue to be rectified. This is how people check out. This is how people become apathetic. One of the things I get to experience is like how the fan base for like the Atlanta Hawks works. And the Atlanta Hawks traded Dominique Wilkins. And that fan base has never been the same ever since they made that move. It just destroyed any will to ever get excited about anything that franchise does. Look, the Browns are a staple in the city of Cleveland, and Browns fans have stuck through a lot. But the Cleveland Browns right now are asking more of their fans than any other fan base in the NFL. And they're asking more of their fans than in any other time in Cleveland Browns history outside the 1995 season, where you were legitimately asking your fan base to still hold the team down while also moving the team to Baltimore. That's the only time I can remember that this fan base has been asked for more out of itself. And it's too much. And it's ridiculous. I understand pride's going to want to make you keep on to Watson. I understand that money is going to want to make you just see if you can get this right. But at some point, you either got to admit that the Titanic is sinking or go down playing the music on the boat. You're smart, you get the hell off the boat. The boat's sinking. The $230 million ship, it's port starboard, right? It is going into the water. It's going into the water very slowly because it's a very big ship, just like Deshaun Watson, very large contract. You're not gonna just bench that guy overnight. That era isn't just gonna end overnight, but it's clearly on its way down, on its way out. You could see it from how the players react to him, which is the most damning thing. You can see it from how the fan base reacts to him. Hell, you can see it by the lack of faith they have in their game plans for Deshaun Watson. They all know on some level this ain't working. It's if they're willing to admit that to themselves. It's the question. But this is a train wreck for the Cleveland Browns. No doubt about it. And I struggle. And look, if anybody in chat, if you keep an eye out on chat, if anybody in chat can provide a good argument other than like, oh, we should play Watson because he sucks and playing him will guarantee that we get the number 1 overall pick, anything, actual argument to keep Watson as the starter. Like, is there a real argument other than, we spent a lot of money? We traded a lot. Like, there's really no tangible argument for Watson staying the starter. I can't imagine one. And I've been very fair to Watson. I've given this time. I have went through the tape of every game Watson has played. I have done my due diligence before coming to this conclusion about if Watson is a failure or not here. I've done it. I put the work in. I've looked at the film. I've been painfully fair to Deshaun over these last 2 years and a quarter. And that game right there, that's it. That's the conclusion. He's not good anymore. He's just not good anymore. There's no fixing it. We got half the fan base hoping he gets suspended. We got the other half of the fan base hoping he gets benched. Who wants this anymore? What are we putting him out there for? Let's look at some of the tape here with Deshaun. So we can kind of review this, right? Here's some of the tape here with Deshaun Watson. It's not pretty what's going on here. What you're seeing here is a quarterback who is struggling to process. What you're seeing here is a quarterback who is struggling to see the field. A quarterback who is skittish in the pocket. It's not a good thing right now. It's just not a good thing. Let me get it set up and queued up here real quick. All right. Here's Watson on the first snap that we have for him. Boom, right there. There's David Njoku. He's open. You know that he's open, right? Because I don't like screenshotting guys where you just get to the top of a quarterback's drop and saying, oh, he's open. He should have threw that ball there, right? You want to work through the process. How does the quarterback know from pre and post snap that the guy's going to be open? The reason he should know pre-post snap that the hitch is going to be there with Njoku is look at the coverage, right? No flat defender. Linebacker standing up. Njoku realizes this, sits in the soft spot in the zone. Hit David Njoku right there. Instead, we throw this deep post to Amari that had no chance of being open. Because again, if you just look at the process here before the ball's even let go, there's a middle deep safety. Why would you think a post route would work there, right? You can see it from the snap. The safety is strafing in between the seams. So you know he's middle deep. And he's middle deep with eyes towards the route that you're about to throw, because you have nothing going on backside to pull that safety away. So why in the world would you think this post would work? All right, this play right here. This play, slide protect's wrong, right? Some of the stuff that people give Watson slack on is like, oh, well, he can't block for these guys, right? But one of the things Watson's is in control of is the slide protection. He should be able to identify these blitzes and be able to tell us where these things are coming from. How do you change it? And how to get blocked up. He's part of that process. They send 4 people here and they get a free run. Do the math here. The Browns have 5 blockers in. They send 4 on the sim pressure and get a free run. Look at that. Why is that the case? Well, he decided to do a full slide left. It was the wrong decision. He gets a free run. Unfortunately, he also misses David Njoku. Look how David Njoku, if you're looking at the bottom of your screen, we're the 25-yard line, right at the arrow on the 30. David Njoku, he's there for a big play. But because you couldn't get the slide protect right, you don't get that blocked up when it absolutely should have been blocked up. There's no excuse for a free runner on a 4-man pressure. And I don't know why you're in full slide for this protection. Or at least, like, you got to check. You got to get in the right protection, especially when you're in empty. He's never been great at that. And it costs you an opportunity, but I'm going to be honest with you, he's not even looking that way. So I don't even know if he would have saw it. It's just been another thing we would have to circle. It's simple stuff, man. Even when the line blocks for him, he gets good protection here. Okay, get the ball to David. He's looking at you. We saw David eat on this kind of stuff. You toss him the ball here. It's like an extended handoff. He breaks a tackle. He gets into the secondary. All of a sudden, it's like a 50-yard gain. This is fundamental, elementary stuff. But instead, holds on to it, waits to the last minute, and then throws it to David when he absolutely has no space to make this catch. Right here, missed throw. I could show more if you don't believe me, but this is where we're at with the quarterback position. A lot of people want the offensive coordinator fired. A lot of people want the head coach fired. Don't think that's the case. Don't think they're what's wrong. Again, look, head coach, offensive coordinator. They cooked up something. They got open. It's open. It's wide open. You get that ball to him in stride, he might break a tackle. Get to like the 55, maybe the 40 if he gets lucky. It's wide open. Quarterback can't make the throw. Okay. On this play right here, literally everybody who runs a route gets open. We're going to go through it from top to bottom. From top to bottom, right? Starting at the top of your screen to the bottom. Let's look at Jerry Jeudy at the top of your screen under the Quincy Carrier Live logo. Right here, dig open. Boom, open. Easy. Easy. It's a big play. That's open. All right, let's go to the slot receiver here. What's he doing? Okay, that's Jordan Atkins running a 9 route. Does he ever pop up? Yep, right there, open. Right here, gets behind that safety, right in front of the deep safety. There's a little bit of a pocket there. Good quarterback can make that throw. All right, let's keep working down on this play. Let's see what else is here, right? All right, let's see what our chip guy's doing, right? We got to run it back in on the line to chip. Okay, pop, and he is wide open. Okay, cool. All right, let's keep working now. Let's keep working on down this play. Let's work down it. Let's keep working down it. Who's next? Okay, we got chip release for Cedric Tillman on the bottom of your screen. Boom, chip release, and nobody's there. He's wide open. Okay. And then lastly, we got Amari Cooper running a corner route at the bottom of your screen. And Amari Cooper is open. Literally, you could have just threw it to anybody, and it would have been a good decision. What does Watson do in this spot? First off, he takes a weird hitch, decides to run from a clean pocket instead of stepping up, and then runs for 4 yards. Is that on the offensive coordinator? Is that Kevin's fault? I don't know. I can't even evaluate it. Their dude's open. It's like that every week. We're getting open. We're not getting a ton of separation, but these guys are open. Doing nothing with it, man. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. See, when things are really simple, then Deshaun could do something. The only thing he can really do well are these deep curls. Really simple stuff. Everything else, it's like we're playing a rookie out there sometimes. We get shit like this. What's this? Somebody explain this to me. I mean, how does that happen? Nobody's rushing him. Like he's trying to get him to go inside, but then he yams it. I don't know, man. This play here initially didn't bug me, but now that I think about it, it does. He wants to throw this post to Jerry Jeudy, and instead of getting this post in the right window, he decides to lead him up the seam right into the buzzing safety, which almost turned into an interception. Leads me to believe he didn't see the safety. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going and going. Right here. You get mesh, you know, middle field's open. You can see the linebacker rush. Boom. You should know right now, middle field's open. I have this under. Let me throw the under. No, I want to run. Look at you just threw this damn under to Amari Cooper. He's off. That's why people are sick, man. That's why the locker room are sick. They've been watching this for a long time. For a long time. They have been watching this, man. Like, imagine. He had an 8.5 QBR, by the way. Somebody put that in chat. Son of Argom says that 8.5 QBR. It's his second single-digit QBR of the season. Look at these numbers for Deshaun this year. I mean, they're atrocious. 60% completion percentage. By the way, this is somebody who throws the lowest yards per attempt, has one of the lowest completion percentages. Think about that right now. Franchise quarterback, self-described superstar quarterback. He's throwing 60% on checkdowns. He's captain checkdown. He's the most check downy quarterback in the NFL right now. He's 32nd in yards per attempt. He's Mr. Checkdown. He made Kirk Cousins look like a risk taker. And he's throwing 60% on him. 60% on 4.8 yards per attempt. Yeah, man. DTR was doing better than that. 170 yards per game, 74 passer rating, 26 sacks. He's always led the league in sacks taken. That's always been a Deshaun Watson thing. He's always been somebody who's quite easy to get sacked. Yeah, I don't blame people for wondering what would happen if Atlanta just landed him like they wanted to. I don't blame people for that. Hell, I don't even blame people for doing the whole Baker Mayfield whataboutism, right? Because we all know that Baker Mayfield needs to go through more than just like 2021 to get to where he is today. It's revisionist history. It's certainly fan fiction to think that Baker Mayfield would have figured everything out in Cleveland the way that things ended in 2021. And it's important to remember that as untenable as this situation is with Deshaun Watson, it was similarly that way with Baker Mayfield by the end of 2021. So we're really living in revisionist history when we're like, oh, if we would have just stuck with Baker and stuck it out. There was no sticking it out, man. It was inevitable that whole thing had ended. That relationship was not going to be mended there between Baker Mayfield, the Cleveland Browns, and Kevin Stefanski. But we can live in a retcon fantasy world where that might have been possible. And I don't blame people for living in that. I don't even blame people for thinking about Joe Flacco at this point. But the truth is, whether Joe Flacco was on this team or not, Deshaun Watson would be playing quarterback still. See, what's stopping Deshaun Watson from getting benched has nothing to do about the backup. The Browns have a good backup in Jameis Winston behind him. An experienced backup, a backup who's quite frankly played more games, I think, than Deshaun Watson. Who's older, more experienced. Like, they got a backup in Jameis that any team would be comfortable enough to play right now. But the backup is not why the Browns aren't playing Deshaun Watson. It's the off the field and on the field politics that you have to deal with benching a dude like Deshaun Watson. It's the fact that you got to rectify with your owner that you're going to end the era of quarterback that you spent $230 million on. That's why he's not benched. If this were a regular player at any other position, at any other pay grade, playing like this, he would get benched. If Deshaun Watson was paid $23 million a year instead of $45, he would have got benched. So we could talk about Joe Flacco being here or not, and maybe we should have kept Joe Flacco or not. Hey, man, we just be arguing about benching Deshaun for Joe Flacco instead of benching him for Jameis Winston. It really wouldn't have changed anything. And who knows how Jameis would have been. And I'm so tired of the excuses that we're seeing, right? I think somebody just said it in chat because like a million people are yelling at that guy about anybody would look this bad behind this offensive line. No, that's a lie. Stop it. That's a lie. That's not true. That's not true. This is not what a quarterback looks like behind a bad offensive line. This is what a god-awful quarterback looks like behind a bad offensive line. Joe Burrow never looks like this, even though Joe Burrow's had worse offensive lines. You know why? Because Joe Burrow's good at football. See, players who are good at football at the quarterback position, they don't look like this ever, let alone 3 times this season. But Deshaun does. We can't blame it on drop passes this week. So we're going to blame it on the offensive line. The offensive line stinks. Hell, I've seen Deshaun Watson play better with worse offensive lines than what he's playing like now. When Deshaun Watson was in Houston and his offensive line stinked, did Deshaun Watson ever look like this? You can answer that question if you want to. You can answer that question if you want to. Like, the only time we see a quarterback look like this is when the quarterback stinks. Q will take some questions to end the show. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take some questions to end the show for sure. That's all I'm asking. I don't think we got to debate whether the Watson era should be done or not. The question is, what's the fallout going to look like and how long it's going to take us to get to the end of this Watson thing? How stubborn are we going to be? Hey, I don't understand why Jameis Winston is here if you're not willing to put him in a situation like this. If Deshaun Watson is this mature team leader that he claims to be, he should look at what he's put out there and think to himself, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I should let Jameis play for a little bit. He's not going to do that because he knows if he sits the bench and Jameis goes in there and plays better than he does, which wouldn't be hard to accomplish, his career is over. Deshaun Watson, every week he goes out there, is just trying to justify his career. This isn't about winning games anymore. This is just about the Browns funding Deshaun Watson's single-handed crusade to justify his football career. And every week he goes out there, and more often than not, he proves or makes the argument even more difficult to justify his football career. That's why he don't want to sit the bench. That's why he don't want to get benched. Why Kevin doesn't want to do it? Why Andrew Berry doesn't want to do it? Why Jimmy Haslam doesn't want to do it? Well, that's just pride and stupidity. The trust is gone with Watson, man. The fan base don't believe in him anymore. The team doesn't believe in him. And I have to imagine about how the team reacts to him. They've been watching this since May. So the hope that there's going to be a miraculous turnaround at some point, I think is unfounded. Because what is going to cause this miraculous turnaround? He has not looked like he has stacked any progression up on top of each other. Last week, he had a decent game, a pretty good game. Pro Football Focus said it was a great game. What did he do to build off that? He went off there and had the worst game of his life. Can't win like that. I made the argument in 2019 or 2021, hey, man, Baker's too inconsistent to win with. If Baker was too inconsistent to win with, my God, Deshaun Watson is too inconsistent to live with. Let's take some questions. Let's take some questions for the show, for anybody who has them. Hey, Q, do you think the players are quitting on Watson or Stefanski? This is a good question. Are they quitting on Watson or are they quitting on Stefanski? Right now, I would have to say it feels like it's just Watson that they don't believe in. But if the Browns aren't careful and they tie themselves too deeply to this experiment working after it's proven itself to be a failure, then it will very easily turn into, well, I'm turning on Watson, and I guess you're with Watson, so I'm turning on you too. And once you get to that point, you can't come back. Kevin's got to manage this. Okay, what's managing your ego and your pride about this Watson trade? And what is managing the locker room? Because, like, maybe the Philly game, you can live with it, but these guys are going to go through hell at home against the Cincinnati Bengals if Watson doesn't play miraculous versus Philly next week. And once they experience that, man, you got hours before you got to move on from Watson before that becomes them turning on you too if you're Stefanski and Barry. The question is, how long do they really want this to drag on long enough that it starts to stank on them too? How long do you think Cleveland actually lets him play before they feel like they have to pull the trigger? It depends on what he looks like next week, but if this looks similar, I could not imagine they think it was a good idea to put him as a starting quarterback against the Cincinnati Bengals at home. Like, you really, really got to think to yourself, hey, do you want to have this dude play another home game? How long do you think Cleveland will actually? Okay, yeah, we already got that one. Like, it's inevitable at this point. It's just win. Trill Hill says, what do you attribute the steep decline to? A lot of people saying he's not there mentally, but honestly, he doesn't seem like he even knows the plays. I blame money and comfort. No, I don't think it's money and comfort. I think Deshaun Watson has earnestly wanted to play good football, if not for any other reason than to repair his reputation. Like, if we're just even saying he had a selfish motive behind this whole thing, the selfish motive would be, hey, he has to play good for his reputation to be repaired. So I don't think this is him just being like, oh, I got my money, I'm good. To him, I think his reputation does matter to him. He seems very sensitive about it, right? Like, this is a guy who is sensitive about that, has made it clear that he's sensitive about that. And I think he wants to play well so his reputation gets better. I think what to attribute to the steep decline, the increase in cover two that we've seen, the two high looks. He's not been good against that historically. He's gotten worse. He's also aged since 2020. Some people age faster than others. You can see Kirk Cousins out there at 37 still slinging it, but some quarterbacks like Cam, they were cooked by the time they were 29. So I think he aged. I don't think he's physically as capable as he once was, especially when it comes to throwing the football. And I think that time off really affected his mental ability to play football. And I don't think he's ever caught back up. I think all those things added to this steep decline. And then you get to this season where he's sniffing 30 and he looks like he's sniffing 30. So now he's cooked. He's mentally a step behind. It is what it is. He stinks. Q, assuming the Watson situation and the change in the offense to suit Watson is against Stefanski's will, is it too much? It's not against Stefanski's will, man. Like, Stefanski wants this to work as much as anybody. That's why Ken Dorsey is here. Stefanski didn't get a gun put to his head to have to hire Ken Dorsey. Stefanski has this offense because that's what everybody thought would be the best plan for Deshaun Watson. And then Deshaun Watson came out here and demonstrated that he is not worthy of having an offense built around him or even starting. And again, this is why if Kevin lets this thing go on longer, that stench is going to start to rub on him. He's not exempt from this whole thing. The Haslams didn't force Watson on Andrew Berry. The Haslams didn't force Watson on Kevin Stefanski. The football ops brought this to Jimmy Haslam. And that was a massive mistake in hindsight. Now, again, the Watson they thought they were getting was much different than the Watson that they got, to be fair. But let's be honest about this. If this worked out, We're not giving Jimmy Haslam 100% of the credit. We're talking about how AB and Kevin got their guy. Now it's not working out. We just can't act like it was all Jimmy Haslam just because it's convenient. No, these three wanted this dude here. They just had no clue that this dude, the dude they were recruiting, didn't exist anymore. Because the Deshaun Watson that they wanted played in 2018, 2019, and 2020. The Deshaun Watson they got ain't that one. Ain't even close to that one. That's what happened. It's not some big conspiracy. It's not like Jimmy Haslam traded for Cook Deshaun Watson and forced this on Jimmy. This isn't like when the Commanders brought in Carson Wentz well after it was known that he was cooked. They traded for Deshaun when it seemed like Deshaun was in his prime. And then they got a horrible result. And the only thing that could have gave you a hint about this being that result is the off-the-field situation that Deshaun Watson was going through. Maybe football ops underestimated the toll mentally that something like that was going to take on his ability to play football well again. But that's what happened. I'm not giving the flag, the free pass to Stefanski. If he doesn't get off of this, he's responsible for bringing him in. If he's responsible for not moving on from him when it becomes appropriate and that turns into the locker room turn on him, he's not going to survive this. Q, if Watson doesn't get it together and they refuse to bench him, do you think Myles Garrett asks for a trade next year? Myles Garrett, I don't think he's interested in being moved from Cleveland. He's really locked in to being the man here in Cleveland. And if this franchise chooses to stick with it and eat the loss on Deshaun Watson, so much so that they're willing to trade Myles Garrett to make the Watson reality continue, then the Browns deserve everything they get. But I promise you this in my heart, I do not believe the Browns are foolish enough, even though you don't have much trust in management right now. The Browns are not stupid enough to decide, hey, Myles wants out of here. If you don't end this Watson thing, let's stick with Watson. I don't think that's going to be how this goes. Makes you wonder, too, about that Amari Cooper Snapchat post or Instagram story. I'm sorry, I'm old, right? But the Instagram story where he says, I promise you I wouldn't have mind. A lot of people thought he was talking about going from living in Cleveland to living in San Francisco or playing for the Browns and playing for the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe he was talking about going from playing with Deshaun Watson as his quarterback to Brock Purdy. Maybe he wouldn't have minded that. Maybe that was a sign of how bad things were going in the building with Deshaun Watson. Someone said that Myles is looking for houses in California. Hey, man, every athlete lives in California. I think Deshaun has a house in California. Does that mean he's getting traded to the Rams? No. The Browns aren't going to trade Myles Garrett. If Myles Garrett demands that this thing ends because Watson is here, then Watson goes. That's how the clout works. You got any more questions before you head out? All right. Well, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for joining me on Quincy Carrier Live. About a fun hour of football talk. I mean, like, not a fun hour, but it's fun. I had fun in a weird way. I hope you had fun. Let's see what they do next week. Go Browns. As